music of Sir William Walton, the electrifying beginning of the scherzo from his first symphony, and it's marked to be played very fast and with malice. Next Tuesday, Sir William Walton celebrates his 75th birthday. And as our tribute, we're going to devote the whole of our program tonight to the First Symphony. It was written over 40 years ago, and it remains one of the masterpieces of the 20th century. One of the most distinguished interpreters of Walton's music is Andre Previn, and so we've invited Andre Previn to come to the studio and rehearse this First Symphony of Walton with the London Symphony Orchestra. I'll also be talking with Andre Previn, and we have a conversation with Sir William Walton. We filmed the interview on the terrace of his home on the Isle of Ischia, where for the past 20 years or so he's lived with the Bay of Naples as a backdrop. A far cry from Walton's native town of Oldham in Lancashire, or the hurly-burly of musical life in London. Now, as well as the rehearsal tonight, there'll also be a performance of the First Symphony on BBC television. That'll be in the Lively Arts series on Sunday next on BBC Two, when you'll be able to see the fruits of the rehearsal that we're now going to watch in Omnibus. Andre Previn with the London Symphony Orchestra rehearsed the First Symphony of Sir William Walton.
Easy.
Walton began writing his First Symphony in 1932, when he was only 30. Behind him were several works that had established him as a major British composer, among them Façade, the Viola Concerto, and Belshazzar's Feast. Now he set out to show his mastery of that most daunting of musical forms, the symphony. The symphony was commissioned by the BBC. It was planned that the first performance should be in December 1934, conducted by Sir Hamilton Harty. But by that date, Walton had only completed the first three movements, and he took the very unusual step of allowing the symphony to be performed unfinished, without its finale. Not until a year later were all four movements heard, under Harty's baton, at the Queen's Hall. The critics were generous in their praise for this brilliant new British symphony. It was hailed as a landmark in music, a triumph for the young Walton. What lay behind the power that Walton unleashed in his symphony? I asked Sir William whether it had anything to do with the dedication at the head of the score to the Baroness Immer Dernberg. Who was Immer Dernberg?
She was a very great friend of mine over several years, and this symphony was about a fearful quarrel we had in the middle of this idyllic sort of business. And then I wrote this rather awful tempestuous work, and it was really all her fault.
It wouldn't occur to me, but then I never saw Immer Dernberg. She must have been quite a lady, if it really is about a love affair. I don't think so, frankly. It may have been during a love affair or after or whatever, and it may have crossed his mind, but surely a piece of this immense conception is not about a love affair or about a war or about a personal feeling or anything. It is a piece of absolutely remarkable, what you would call absolute music. It is just about the notes. Of course, who am I to argue with William? I mean, he knows what it's about. But as an interpreter of the piece, I would not think that it was about anything as ephemeral, if you like, as a personal happening. I think it is a piece really for the century and thereby outlives any love affair.
And yet the Baroness clearly did influence Walton when he was writing the symphony. I wondered whether that was why the second movement carries the instruction with malice, to be played fast and with malice, con malizia.
Well, that was when I was feeling rather sore.
So she must have done something pretty awful to you to have...
Well, it was rather.
But then, was that the reason, deep down, why you didn't find it easy to finish the symphony?
Yes, really.
Because this is unusual.
Well, it was all right. The third movement was a very sad movement.
But very beautiful, very tranquil in the end.
Yeah. And then the last movement was a sort of real change. In fact, another girl came along. And it changed the whole aspect of my feeling. And it is just going out to millions of people.
Including maybe some of your old friends.
Yeah, maybe. Perhaps I better stop.
Go with the beat. Let him play around with the beat. Now the next bar almost start again with a little bit less.
Apart from facade, Walton has never been able to compose quickly, and 3 years of laborious effort went into the first symphony. At one period, he wrote this despairing letter to Sir Hamilton Harty, apologizing for the delay in finishing the music. I must say, I think it almost hopeless for anyone to produce anything in any of the arts in these days. It is practically impossible to get away from the general feeling of hopelessness and chaos which exists everywhere, however one may try.
It seems to me that that is a sentence that you can trace through the centuries, not just through the decades. I mean, I think that all creative people have always thought that they were living in a time of utter chaos, with the possible exception of Mendelssohn. And so, you know, to say that in 1933, before World War II, without, I mean, if he felt that way in the 30s, what would he feel like now? Good God. I think that that is simply the awareness of anyone creative and instinctual, but it doesn't necessarily have a meaning totally toward the time.
You've conducted a lot of Walton's music, nearly all of it, I think, at one time or another. Where do you think the First Symphony ranks in his output?
Well, I don't like lists of, I mean, it's not like seeding tennis players, but if I had to, I would say that I think, and again it's purely personal, I think the First Symphony is his masterpiece. I think if I had to absolutely choose one of those desert island businesses of his works, I would be hard-pressed, but I would say the First Symphony. I think it's a very, very great piece.
And what is the nature of its greatness, to really pin you down now?
Well, it's manifold. There are many reasons. First of all, it is an obvious thing to say that of its time it was an amazing symphony to have been written in Britain. It was the first symphony of that size in a great many years and of that kind of accomplishment. But where I think it transcends that is that although surely Walton's music, especially in this symphony, is extremely English, it is also extremely Walton, which is a much more difficult thing to carry off. One of the amazing things is to realize that he did write it in the early 30s, and he is an English composer, and that there's no specific precedent to this kind of super brilliant sound in the orchestra. I mean, he didn't get it out of the academician teachings, and he didn't get it from any one of his immediate predecessors. And I know that, I mean, he was influenced a bit by Stravinsky, and it's been suggested by Sibelius, but the sound of the orchestra is unique to him. He did tell me once that one of the reasons that this symphony was a rather slow starter in terms of international acceptance was because at the time it was just too damn difficult to play. They weren't used to that kind of orchestral writing.
We got lost. It's all right.
The playing difficulties, the actual manipulation of the notes in the orchestra, I think after 40 years are still absolute dynamite to get through. And I think in this piece, as in much of Walton's music, you cannot hear any extract of this piece without knowing, after a few seconds only, that that's William Walton, and that beats any parochial nationalism that I can think of. I mean, the first entrance of the second violins with that rhythmic figure, bum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum, is already, no one else could possibly have written that. No one. And the ensuing oboe tune. And there are people who, in their infinite wisdom, have compared this to Sibelius and compared it to all kinds of other places. I don't see that. I think it's a wholly original work, and that's why I admire it so much. There's not a moment of pastiche in it or conscious imitativeness. I think this is what he's about. When I first studied the piece, I thought, good heavens, there's enough music in the string parts for 3 symphonies, but it makes an effect that only Walton gets out of the string writing, and it is diabolically difficult to execute.
Well, that's all right. That's a time-honored moment. Let us please, where are we there? After 8, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9th bar after 8, please. Just the violas once. And. I tell you what, the downbeats of the fourth bar. Don't worry about the dots when it's badam. Just play it as if it were two semiquavers. Badam, 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 badam. Because by playing badam, it gets too long. Once more, please. Same place. And one. Okay, let's do it once more. Let's do it once more and see if we can do some of the dynamics that are marked with the crescendos and everything. Once more. And one. No. No, no, no. You have to come off the tied over quaver together. Ba-dum, diddly-dum, once more. And Okay. All right, it's closer.
This first movement is so full of dynamic energy that for the conductor there's the problem of maintaining some kind of restraint.
You have to keep it in check, that's the great thing. Tight rein on the orchestra. Because if you spoil the climaxes if you get them too soon.
I'm in total agreement. I mean, the danger in the first movement is that it is possible to have a series of like 4 or 5 absolutely shattering climactic points, and in fact it is so structured that you can hold the reins back a lot, and then the last few really, really pay off.
Horns, to what degree are you taking it easy? I mean that in the most polite way. Because the A flat seemed kind of, you know, bomb. It has to eventually, at least tomorrow, it has to ring out a little bit more.
Rehearsing such strenuous music is particularly tiring for horn players, taxing their lips and their breath control. Previn was asking the horns there whether they were saving themselves for the actual recording of the symphony the next day.
Let me put it to you this way, it would be easier if everyone were made of steel and iron and could do it. But over the years I have learned that people who need as much physical energy as a horn section does, it is fair game for them to make sure that everything is in the right place and that they understand the intention, but they save up for the performance. And I think a conductor who demands the last gasp from everybody at every bar of the rehearsal is ill-advised.
Glad to see some things don't change. Can we all agree on what the bowing is on the entrance of the D flat, John? Can you?
During the rehearsal, Previn takes advice from the leader, John Georgiadis, about problems of phrasing and bowing. He's just rejoined the LSO after a long spell as a freelance. In fact, Previn and he are working together for the first time in 4 years.
Let's do the printed bowing. Let's do the printed bowing then. What have I said? What is the...
No. I'd like to see you try it. May I ask one thing, please, though? First and seconds, when you then get into the part that goes bam, bam, ba, dee, da, dee, da, dee, da, dum, ba, da,
Some of the difficulties arise from the markings in the orchestral parts. The parts get loaned out by the publisher to one orchestra after another, and sometimes the composer's intentions are literally obscured.
Sounds something interesting's come to light rubbing all the pencil out there. We've got separate semiquavers underneath the muck here. I don't know whether that's printed.
Separate semiquavers where?
At that point. Da, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da.
Yes, but that's crazy.
All right. Yeah. It might have been rather sensational, actually. It might have been actually rather sensational.
Well, I mean, let's try it once.
Try it once.
Try it once. Try it separate.
Really fast.
There's also got a sostenuto written there. Sost.
Well, you can't have everything, Hans.
Look at that.
Yes, well, possibly you could just play it alone there. All right.
The parts have been around for a long time, and they've been played by the very greatest orchestras as well as by amateur orchestras. And by now, I mean, you know, never mind pencil marks, there are gravy stains on it. You know, you don't know what's under all that anymore.
Yeah, well, okay, it's worth trying. It's worth trying. Let's do it once more, but let's do it together. On the bar that starts in, which is what after 34? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th? Okay, 10th bar, please, after 34. I'll give you a second to count that. 10th. And 1. Yeah. It's not quite together. I tell you what. Okay.
One more try. Quick off the mark. You've got to be quick off that bar line.
Same place. And. That's very nice. I must say that is very sensational when it happens. Good.
When Georgiadis suggested to you that you might try that, the leader, you said, no, that's crazy. But then you said, let's just give it a turn.
Yes.
5 minutes later, you were saying it was sensational. Now, how
Yes.
can be something which seemed to be wrong so quickly become right?
Well, because it was, I mean, it was a technical thing. It was a specific method of playing the notes and not playing them legato. And it just seemed to me, at first glance, at the speed at that particular moment of the music, to be almost fiendishly and unnecessarily difficult. But I don't blame whoever it was to have covered the music with slurs. I had never seen it before. And Georgiadis is phenomenal at sorting that out very quickly.
Yeah, let's really use the whole bow. I feel sometimes we've got into a habit of playing in just the strong area of the bow. Use the whole bleeding lot.
Here we go. How nicely put. Here we go, at 37.
Each section of the music is marked with a rehearsal number. It's a bit like a map reference, so that when there's a break, everybody can restart quickly.
Yes, there are numbers or figures in some cases every so often, certainly a couple per page, because otherwise you would have to say, gentlemen, count from the beginning, 2,972 bars in, we'll start again. You know, it'd be a very long rehearsal.
Let's have before 42, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. 5 before 42. 1. That's pretty good. Okay, onward, please. Second movement.
The second movement, a scherzo, has one of the most unusual tempo markings in all music, presto con malizia, very fast with malice. It's characterized by irregular, jagged rhythms.
That should be gone at, I think. No stopping for the wire netting or anything like that.
No stopping for the wire netting, I like that.
In fact, that marking with malice is my favorite marking in 20th century music because, in fact, if you make an orchestra read that tempo indication, if you like, and keep it in mind, they do play it quite differently than if he had just simply said, you know, fast, slow, or whatever. It's a genius marking. If there's anything that I may pay too much attention to, if you like, during the rehearsal of this piece, is the fact that I keep insisting and stressing and pleading for the rhythmic clarity in the piece because I think it's so personal to Walton's music that it would be a shame to neglect it.
Accent, 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 accent. You weren't there yet. Yes. Now that we've played it through once, one generality, please. Now that it's no longer, you know, quite the instant panic, not so relentlessly loud. I think that the accents and all the kind of malice and viciousness will come out if we make the accents as prescribed, but don't play everything quite so loud. In this very dead atmosphere, it just begins to be a meaningless roar.
The problems in the second movement are the fact that it is very, very meticulously marked with very off-kilter accents, which are, I think, totally necessary to bring that movement off. And if everything is played loud, and the accents even louder, then after a while it can't be done anymore. So you can almost play that second movement at a Mendelssohnian scherzo level and slam those accents out, and then they really become jagged and amazing and malicious. And of course, not every orchestra can do that. This one can.
4 before 71. We'll get the notes and the rhythms, and then we'll have to do something about the fact that it's a little lackadaisical. 4 before 71. And. that isn't right yet. Shh, excuse me. After the horns do that, after 74, first and seconds, when you trade off the that business, if they could have very definite little accents at the beginning of each to contrast the trills that don't have an accent. And, all right, one before 74.
Then, because we've got accents on them all. Oh, I see. You mean we got them in groups of 4?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. And then somebody else has them.
Good question.
I don't know whether you con me into that or not.
I thought you were singing alternate accents, Andre. That's all. That's why I got confused.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. One before 74, please. It's like old times. Here we go. Again, the accent on the second. Accent on each one. Now, 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 now. No, it's too loud. Sorry. No, no. Starting a bar after 79, please. Subito pianissimo on strings when you come in. Don't let the accents throw it beyond the pianissimo. One after at 79. And yam. Not too loud yet. Thank you. Bravo. T. It's a bloody-minded piece.
The third movement, Andante con malinconia, with melancholy, is in Walton's most romantic manner, with a highly impassioned central section. Walton himself has conducted many performances of his music, including the symphony, and I asked him whether the slow movement was relatively easy to conduct.
That's easy to conduct.
We must ask Mr. Previn whether he agrees.
Yeah.
You're putting me into a terrible position because I have to disagree with the composer, and that is cheeky. But if he means it is very easy to beat time as compared with the complexities of the second movement, yes, he's quite right. But actually, I find that the third movement, which is very romantic and very passionate, is also rather thickly scored, and I find the problems of balance within the orchestra even more attenuated than the ones in the first and second movements, because the sounds in the first and second movements tend to be rather block sounds, and in the third movements they're very diffused, and they're very artfully spread through all the sections, and in order to make sure that the most important strain of thought comes out very clearly, I find the work involved in the third movement just as hard as the other two.
That's good. And get away from the clarinet there. Now. change that. Can we have, please, violas and top-line cellos? It says appassionato, vibrato, espressivo, the whole lot, yes. But it also says piano, and the oboes have a very nice mezzo-piano counter. So don't go totally into Rachmaninoff land yet. Okay, right there, please. Let's have one bar before 94. Did you want to?
There's a special marking of his to be on the A strings here. But somebody's crossed over, which seems absurd. If you're going up there in the first place, it must be to come down on the A string, surely. Wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Well, that's what we thought.
Okay.
I wondered if that wasn't your mark to cross over
No,
to
no,
a D
no,
string.
no. I don't even know enough about crossing the string to put it there. All right. One before 94, please, everybody.
Feeding.
The mixture of vitality and very open romantic passion appeals to me enormously. And then he suddenly has these wonderfully grandiose, not grandiose, but moments of real grandeur, like in the fourth movement of this or in Belshazzar. But just when you think that you've got him pigeonholed as an immensely vital and rhythmic composer, he will suddenly unfold a theme of such wonderfully turbulent passion and blatant romanticism, and it just speaks to me instantly. It always has. I find his music, it speaks to me very clearly, and it always has done, and I hope it always will.
No, that's time-honored, but if you, it's just written funny as far as I'm concerned. If you could look at the last, just to pick up into triplets, you know, bop, 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 bom. It's written so as to make the four things seem across the beat. Let's do that once more, please. One, da, ba, 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 ba.
We're getting near the end of the rehearsal, and they've moved on to the finale. I asked Sir William what he felt about conducting that.
Well, that's also easy to conduct, really. I mean, it's very confident music, and it gives the conductor a certain amount of confidence, too. I mean, I always look forward to it when I was, the last moment, when I was conducting this. Thank God this part's over. Thank God this part. When we come to the finale, it's rather, you know, just money for jam.
Well, that's William at his most disarming, I must say. I'm glad he thinks so. Money for jam, is that the phrase?
Yes.
That's very sweet. He has expensive jam then. I find it very difficult. I think you would find orchestral players would find it very difficult as well.
First of all, 6 bars before 136, I need to hear the trumpets on. When you get to the bam, 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 beam, bam, those 6 bars have to come out a little more. Now, we really must do that once more, please. Let's do it a little slower once for notes. 132. 1 bar before, yum, bum. A little slower. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Ba, ba, ba. I don't think so. No. You all look busy, but I don't think it's not quite right. No. All right. Yes, I know. Once more, please.
I just thought to remind you that just about 4 minutes to go, in case you wanted to get through to the end rather than rehearse this bit.
No, because the ending. No, I tell you quite frankly, the ending. You know, I mean, after a certain volume of triple fortissimo, almost anything goes. But this is unfortunately quiet. Let's spend the last 4 minutes on this. One before 132.
But what you do feel is that this kind of blaze of triumph that he has written into the music is what does give you confidence, and it's a quite remarkable ending to a quite remarkable symphony.
Now each one more. Accent. Now really exaggerate. Accent up. Horns, just let me hear once at 111, and the third bar thereof, all really equal. Right now I hear the top voice enormously heroic, but it should be really all four. Yabba-bam! That as big as we can make that.
When it was first performed, it was not a flop. On the contrary, unlike so many pieces which the critics have got wrong. One paper said it was a landmark in our musical history. Another said that it was the most important first night in many years. Cardus drew attention to its half-desperate, half-triumphant nature. Half-desperate and half-triumphant.
That's nice. That's a lovely phrase.
It's a good phrase, isn't
Yes.
it? Do you think that this time they were right?
Yes, well, I think it's quite nice to think that once every 40 years they get it right.
Yes, those of you that have a recital tonight can go quickly. The rest of you, thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Thank you. Bravo. Bravo.
Walton's First Symphony. And next day, the orchestra came back and gave a performance of the work, which you'll be able to hear on the Lively Arts series on BBC Two next Sunday, together with a survey of Sir William's work. We'll be back next Thursday with another edition of Omnibus. And until then, it's good night from the programme, and I'm sure you'll all want to join us in wishing Sir William Walton a very happy birthday next Tuesday. Good night.
Do something on that tomorrow. It's very wooden. The acoustic in here is just unbelievable. It's like dropping something on the floor. Yes, I want him to, I'll have a word with him anyway, but I want him to be able to wander around the bar line, but we have to keep the bar line for him.